You know, folks, we all knew that Donald Trump would be worse this go around, and we also knew that once he got reelected, he would not need his base anymore. We knew that once he got over that finish line and he got all of his loyal soldiers behind him in his regime, we knew right then and there that it wouldn't matter what his supporters thought, he would just go forward with his authoritarianism without them and wouldn't give two shits about any of them. He only used them to get where he is. We saw Marjorie Taylor Greene resign, and in my mind, good riddance. Don't let the door hit you. You couldn't have picked a better time to leave. I'm glad you're gone. But he never cared about Marjorie Taylor Greene, and he never cared about how loyal that Marjorie Taylor Greene was to him, and nor does he care about how loyal any of his followers are, because the minute they step out of line, he's done with them. He only uses people to get ahead, and the minute that they step out of line with him, he tosses them to the curb. Now, I'm not going to play any of his clips during this video because I'm really tired of hearing him talk, but I just want to talk about how that he's been spiraling even more out of control here lately. We saw him refer to a lady reporter as Piggy, and we saw him call another one ugly, and then he went off on another tirade calling a reporter stupid, calling him a stupid person, and we've seen him pounding the table. And now he comes out in a Thanksgiving post that I'm not going to pull up on the screen, but I'm sure a lot of you have seen it. And if you've not, you can look for it yourself. But he referred to Governor Tim Walz out of Minnesota as the R word. He used the R slur on Tim Walz. And people will just continue to roll with this guy. And Caroline Leavitt will say things like, well, at least he just says it to your face and you don't have to worry about him saying it behind your back. And Laura Trump will go on Bill Maher and say, well, did he really call her Piggy? Is that really what he said? And they'll just sit and mock and laugh at everybody that tries to point this stuff out. But folks, for a party that claims to be about protecting children, they sure don't give a shit about the example they set for the children. They sure don't give a shit for the way they carry themselves in front of the children. They voted to reelect a guy who I could go back down the list and we would be here for the rest of the day. I would just have to go live here and just talk for the next 48 hours, and I still wouldn't get everything that Donald Trump's ever said or done. But they voted for a guy who making fun of the handicapped wasn't a deal breaker. Bragging about groping women wasn't a deal breaker. Mocking and making fun of prisoners of war wasn't a deal breaker. Calling veterans suckers and losers wasn't a deal breaker. I mean, I could sit here all day long and go down that list. You know, being impeached twice, January 6th, we could go through it all. None of those things was deal breakers. So I don't necessarily think that any of these things are going to be deal breakers either. The people that are diehard behind him are just going to continue to be diehard behind him and are going to continue to amplify it even louder. But when will we finally say enough is enough? And when will we finally realize just how much damage this guy has done, not only to our country and to our economy and to our standing in the world, but to respect and to basic human decency? You know, I don't think any president we've had has ever been perfect. And I don't necessarily think that, you know, I don't think presidents are people that should be worshipped. I don't think presidents are people who should be put on pedestals. I feel like that you vote for somebody because you think they're the better person for the job, and then if they don't live up to the standards you thought they should have lived up to, you can vote the other way, or you can vote independent, or you can do whatever. You can primary the person, whatever the case may be. I've never looked at politicians necessarily as heroes or people to be admired. I mean, yeah, in my lifetime I've admired certain politicians, but I don't put them on that pedestal. In other words, what I'm trying to say here is, if they do wrong, I'll call it out. That's just common sense to me. But we've gotten so far away from just basic human decency. I don't care if you support Donald Trump on other issues. Is this the type of man you want speaking in front of your children? Is this the kind of man you want setting examples for your children? And would you be okay with your children talking to people the way that Donald Trump does? Coach D said something on his channel. Shout out to Coach D. He said something that I really liked. He said, you know, if you had a teenage son or daughter and they were tweeting the way that Donald Trump is, you would take their phone from them. You would ground them off their phone until they learned how to use it. You would ground them, and you would never let them near their phone again until they learned how to use it and learned how to act right. So today I would like to talk to you about these really cool Ridge wallets. And yes, folks, this right here is a wallet. I'd been seeing these things float around on the internet for a while, and I was really curious about them because I was one of those guys that carried around one of those big crusty leather trifolds. And being a musician, people would pass me off their business cards all the time, and I would have pictures of my kids, and pretty soon my wallet's that damn fat, and I'm riding down the road, my car leans sideways, my back is killing me. So I was saying to myself, how could I just get rid of all this junk in my wallet, get down to my basic needs, and carry them around comfortable? Well, now Ridge just took their game-changing wallet and made it even better. Now say hello to Ridge 2.0, the most refined version of the Ridge wallet. Ridge has been perfecting the wallet for 12 years. Everything is better on the Ridge 2.0. It's 10% lighter. Every gram matters in the Ridge Wallet 2.0. They found the perfect balance. They made it more modular with improved cash straps, money clips, and AirTag attachments. Improved surface design with tonal logos and matching plated cash straps. And what's really cool about these things, they actually hold up to 12 different cards. You may be saying, Brando, how do you get 12 cards in there? Well, actually, it comes with this little screwdriver, and you can adjust it to whatever you need. So however many cards you got, you can adjust it to fit perfectly, and you can slide your cash in over here. Plus, Ridge has a tracker card. You can track your wallet, so there's no more losing your wallet. If you're like me, you go into panic mode. If you can't find it, now you can track it with the Ridge tracker card. So for a limited time, Ridge is having their huge Black Friday sale. Head to ridge.com and get up to 47% off your order. This is by far the biggest discount they've given all year. That's ridge.com for up to 47% off your order during their biggest sale of the year. After your purchase, they will ask you where you heard about them and tell them that Brando sent you. And I think back to when I was growing up as a kid, and I want to preface this by saying that neither one of my grandfathers ever laid a hand on me. They didn't. They didn't have to because I knew they would if I stepped out of line. They were the type of people who, they walked into a room and it was like the damn Undertaker coming down the aisle. It was like there was a mystique about them. And you just knew, don't say that shit. But I promise you, if I had ever bragged about groping a woman around either one of my grandfathers, I probably would have got punched right in the teeth. Or they would have gave my mom and dad the biggest verbal berating that you've ever heard. They would have came down on their head something fierce. If I had have carried myself the way Donald Trump did and spoke to people the way Donald Trump did, my grandfathers would have absolutely disowned me, probably. My mom and dad would have never tolerated it for a second. And again, I was a kid who, I didn't have parents that whipped me or did anything like that. But if I'd have talked like Donald Trump, I'm sure I would have got my ass handed to me a couple of times, because it's absolutely crazy that we live in a world where people will continue to defend this guy and laugh and think it's funny. You know, for those of us that are middle-aged and for those of us who are older, you know, the time rolls by really quick. You know, the older we get, the faster time rolls by. And my 30s went by like greased lightning, and my 40s ain't slowing down either. I said one day to my dad, I said, you know what? I said, my 30s went by quicker than ever. He said, wait till you get to your 60s. He's like, wait till you get into your 70s. It just keeps going by quicker. So the years are going to roll by. But there are children right now being raised up in their very formidable years. They're being raised up under Donald Trump, and they're looking to that. Now, I grew up to vote Democrat, and I grew up to disagree with Ronald Reagan. But Ronald Reagan was the president when I was a kid. And love him or hate him, you can say whatever you want about Reagan. You can disagree with Reagan all day. Reagan was, at least he looked presidential. He carried himself presidential. He carried himself in a respectful manner. I don't agree with him, wouldn't vote for him if he was alive today, but I'm saying he was a respectful dude in the grand scheme of things. And as crazy as I feel for saying this, so was the Bushes. It's one of those things where you could grow up during the Reagan years and you could learn about politics and you could learn where your disagreements were, but you didn't necessarily become a scumbag for listening to Ronald Reagan. Whereas with Donald Trump, if you grow up in those formidable years when your brain is really being shaped, and you grow up in a family who tells you Donald Trump is okay, and Charlie Kirk rhetoric is okay, and Turning Point USA bullshit propaganda is okay, and the way Stephen Miller talks, and the way J.D. Vance talks, and the way the Trump kids talks, if you grow up thinking that's okay. You're going to grow up to be a garbage human. You just are. Because you have to be a garbage human to back this stuff up and support it. And this is coming from a person who, like I've said so many times here on the channel, I've always rooted for the villains in the movies. It's the movies. I don't want it in the real world. I don't want my sons and my grandchildren to look at this guy and have any respect for him. I don't want them to look at him and think that what he's doing is okay in the least, because it's not. So as we go forward, it's just going to get worse with it. He's spiraling. And Tim Walz came out and said, you know what, I think we need to see his MRI results. And I agree with that, because Trump don't even know what part of his body they scanned. So yeah, we should see this, because this dude is demented. He's deranged. He's a lunatic. He's unhinged. He's completely coming off of his rocker. And it's only going to get worse. And I really believe that the J.D. Vances and the Project 2025s of the world are just sitting back using him as long as they can. They're just sitting back and they're going to push him as long and as hard as they can till he gets all of the authoritarian bullshit into place that they want, because they know that for whatever reason, he is the cult of personality. People love him. And let's be realistic. Stephen Miller has the personality of a doorknob. J.D. Vance ain't far behind him. So if that's the future of their party, and as far as a communicator goes, they're fucked. But I see this stuff every day. And, shout out to people like Aaron Parnas and Harry Sisson, who's always right there to tell us what's going on. I appreciate that, because I need to know. I've got so much going on in my life that I need somebody to say, oh, we got breaking news. This is going on. But every time they say we've got some breaking news and they break something that he said, it just gets worse. And I say to myself, when will people ever dial this back? When will people ever realize just how far they let the country fall when they got behind the biggest garbage human that ever lived? Sometimes when I'm sitting here making these videos, I think of my Uncle Brad. He would have got demonetized. There's no way he would have just been able to say he's a garbage human or he's a scumbag. My uncle was like the guy from Christmas Story. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie where Ralphie, wants the BB gun, but the narrator says, my father dealt in profanity like some people does in fine oils. I was like, yeah, it would be bad. But it's just so disgusting to me that we ended up here. And I just hope that decent people will one day say we've had enough. And I can't believe I'm living in a world where I have to say that out loud, or any of this out loud for that matter. And I've sat here now and rambled this long. I appreciate y'all for listening, but how the hell do people get behind this? And when will they say enough is enough?